Welcome to today's Explainer. I'm so glad you're here because we're diving into a place that is just absolutely magnificent. We're talking about the Shaniwar Wada fort, right in the heart of Pune, India. This place was the ultimate seat of power, the literal crown jewel of the Maratha Empire. Before we get into any of the wild rumors, we have to remember that decisions made inside these very walls literally shape the destiny of the entire subcontinent. It's got this breathtaking architectural legacy and just profound historical significance. But there's a catch. Despite all that grand history, it is guarded by a really strict, honestly kind of strange rule, an absolute curfew. After 6 p.m., nobody is allowed inside. And you know how it is, right? When you lock the heavy gates of a massive ancient fort every single night at dusk, well, rumors are going to fly. Okay, let's dive into this, because if you linger a bit too close to those massive stone walls after the sun goes down, legends say you might just hear a chilling cry. Kaka male vachva. In Maratha, that translates to, "Uncle, save me." Local lore, and honestly, countless internet forums, will tell you that you can hear the desperate, echoing screams of a young boy shouting those exact words out into the dark. It is a myth that has completely transformed this incredibly proud Maratha monument into, well, one of the most notoriously haunted locations in the whole country. But to figure out why people actually think they hear this, we gotta uncover the real history. So, moving into our first section, the tragic year of 1773. We're pivoting away from the supernatural stuff right now because the actual documented political drama is just so much more captivating and way more tragic than any ghost story. Imagine inheriting an entire empire when you're barely old enough to drive. I mean, that was the actual reality for Peshwa Narayan Rao. He ascended to the throne at just 16 years old. So he wasn't just a regular teenager, he was the political anchor of this massive but fragile empire. And his youth? It created a terrifying power vacuum. It was perfectly ripe for his ambitious uncle, Raghunath Rao, to exploit. Now, Raghunath had actually been placed under house arrest by Narayan Rao's father, specifically because he was known to be incredibly greedy and power-hungry. But the second the teenage boy took over, Raghunath managed to slip free. And trust me, his desire for the ultimate seat of power hadn't faded one bit. And this brilliantly illustrates the turning point. The entire plot to seize power hinged on a single fatal miscommunication. Raghunath Rao and his fiercely ambitious wife Anandibai hatched a plan. Remember, back then, highly secret communications were done through physical letters. So Raghunath writes a letter to the Afghan guards, who were basically mercenaries acting as the Peshwa's protectors, ordering them to Dhara Narayan Rao. In Marathi, Dhara simply means to catch or capture. But his wife Anandibai intercepted that letter and maliciously altered a single letter to make the word Mara, which means to kill. The Afghan guards, who were promised immense wealth and power, stormed the young Peshwa's chambers in the dead of night. Completely unarmed, totally terrified, the teenager ran through the fort screaming for his uncle, Kaka Malavachwa, right before he was brutally assassinated. Which brings us to how this real-world documented political assassination evolved over centuries into a deeply entrenched ghost story. Just take a look at this timeline. In 1773, we have the brutal murder of the unarmed young Peshwa. Decades later, in 1828, a massive fire breaks out in Shaniwar Wada. It burned for 7 continuous days, destroying a huge chunk of the fort. And locals, they immediately blamed the inferno on the restless, angry spirit of Narayan Rao. Now, let's fast forward nearly 2.5 centuries to 2015, during the filming of the massive Bollywood historical epic Bajirao Mastani. The famous actor Ranveer Singh actually claimed he experienced a paranormal encounter with the Peshwa spirit while shooting. This timeline really shows how historical trauma morphs into local folklore and eventually right into modern pop culture mythology. Let's move to the next section and see how this builds. Section 2. The science behind the spooks. Okay, we are going to aggressively debunk these claims right now, because when we do, the ghosts vanish completely into basic science and brilliant architecture. Let's take that Great Fire of 1828. For generations, people whispered that this was the dead Peshwa's curse, exacting revenge on the site of his murder. But the reality is so much simpler. Shaniwar Wada was an architectural marvel constructed heavily using massive amounts of high-quality, premium timber. What actually happened? A single oil lamp shattered. And when you combine an open flame with a giant fortress made essentially of premium wood, you don't get a supernatural curse, you get basic combustion. The sheer volume of wood is literally the only reason it fueled a massive fire for 7 straight days. Then there are the reports of the phantom footsteps, the eerie echoes that visitors claim to hear when the sun starts to set. Once again, we have to look at the architectural genius of the Maratha Empire. Forts from this era were intentionally designed with absolutely brilliant architectural acoustics. They were engineered so that sound easily travels from one corner of the fortress to another. Why? To allow guards to hear whispers or enemy movements from far away. So when tourists walk through the corridors today and hear distant footsteps echoing off the stone, they aren't hearing a 250-year-old ghost. They are literally just hearing themselves, or maybe other visitors in a completely different wing of the fort, being amplified by incredibly smart 18th century engineering. Now, what's really interesting about this slide is the final piece of the puzzle, the human mind. Psychological priming is the tendency for your expectations to heavily influence how you interpret your surroundings. If you walk into Shaniwar Wada already 100% convinced that it's haunted, your brain is actively looking for ghosts. A sudden draft of cold air, a shifting shadow, a dropped item, it's instantly categorized as paranormal activity. And this actually perfectly explains what happened to Ranveer Singh. He's famous for his intense method acting and was deeply immersed in the history of the Peshwas. But here's the kicker. The crew wasn't even allowed to film inside the real Shaniwar Wada. They were on a replica set. His intense mental immersion, combined with the power of psychological priming, likely just led to a hallucination. He expected the presence of the Peshwa, so his brain created it. Which naturally leads us to a massive question. It's one that internet sleuths absolutely love to point out as proof of some big cover-up. Why aren't paranormal investigators allowed at night? If this is supposedly one of the most haunted places in the country, why do the authorities strictly ban nighttime ghost hunts? Why ban EMF meters? Why enforce a rigid 6 p.m. curfew? Are they actually trying to hide the ghost of Narayan Rao? Well, the answer is firmly rooted in preservation. The Archaeological Survey of India, or the ASI, protects the site. Their job is archaeological preservation, not ghost hunting. They enforce curfews to protect the fragile structural integrity of a genuine 250-year-old Maratha monument. They're preventing vandalism, accidental damage, and honestly, the sheer wear and tear of massive nighttime crowds running around with flashlights looking for spirits. By refusing to let paranormal investigators roam the grounds, the ASI is actively refusing to legitimize baseless myths. They are treating the fort with the dignity it deserves as a true historical landmark. All right, final section, Section 3, Honoring Maratha History. So the crucial point is, as we wrap up this explainer, we really need to look past the shadows. Shaniwar Wada is a proud monument of Maratha legacy. It's not a haunted house. It is deeply disrespectful to reduce a 250-year-old political tragedy, the literal brutal assassination of a terrified 16-year-old boy who held an entire empire together, into a cheap, spooky thrill for tourists. When you visit this fort, you should go to marvel at the architectural genius, to understand the complex, fascinating political history of the Maratha Empire, and to reflect on the real human history that shaped a nation. It's a place of profound historical gravity, and it just deserves our respect, not our superstitions. And that leaves me with one final provocative thought to share with all of you today. If a simple architectural echo and a tragically real political assassination can be warped into a national ghost story over 2 centuries, you really have to wonder, how many other magnificent historical monuments have we reduced to mere ghost stories? Next time you hear a local legend, I challenge you, look past the folklore, seek out the real history, and discover the actual truth hidden within the walls. Thank you so much for joining me on this explainer.